Hello, this is National Chess Master R. Rats at chess.com, continuing my video series on the correspondence team match play between my video lessons group and the team CARPE DIEM. This game was played on board 176. Our man is Scandium versus mrBezludov. Now Scandium's rating has gone way up, so the finishing ratings are a little different, but I'm thinking that's a high 1600 versus low 1500 rating advantage for us at the start. And White's going to employ a very curious opening here. He comes up with e5. Now, why is White playing e5? Well, let's talk about the reason, because I think this is important. Again, I really have come to the conclusion most people, a lot of people, not necessarily most, really don't understand how to play correspondence chess, and this is the most valuable part of correspondence chess, is when you can look up the opening and maintain a satisfactory position. There's no way White should get a disadvantage in a correspondence game in the first 10 moves. But White is going to get a disadvantage even quicker than 10 moves here, as we will see. E5 does take Black out of his book, but it also takes White out of his book. You're spending another move moving a pawn, and you're not developing a piece. So if you're playing over the board, fine, go ahead and do this if you have some ideas. But Black just finds some good moves here. He starts challenging the White pawn setter. Should White take, suddenly White's actually behind in development. Black's ready to develop both bishops, and White isn't ready to develop his bishop. And White's only chessman that moved is off the board. But of course, there's nothing saying that making White take this. I'm just giving an example. Now, White's best move is to develop a piece. Knight f3. Knight f3 protects the pawn, and if pawn takes, the knight can take back, okay? And the knight's in a very decent position. That doesn't mean Black is going to take, but this is the idea. You want to make exchanges that help you develop your pieces or improve their position. So knight f3 is a natural move. What White opts for instead is f4, which doesn't develop a piece, which is one of the reasons why Black's going to start getting in trouble here in just a couple of moves. Okay, g6. Now Black has got a plan. He's going to pile up on e5. And at some point, probably what White needs to do is take on d6. And we've already said that basically puts a slight advantage to Black because he's going to be ahead of development. Now he plays knight f3. And now there's pressure on e5, so this is White's last chance to take. But instead, White chooses to gambit a pawn. And this really isn't a good strategy. And we'll see why in just a moment, because he gives up a pawn on this square. Now, when you give up a pawn in the opening, the general rule is you need 3 tempos for it. For the moment, White only has the advantage of the first move. Okay, that's all White has. It's White's move here. Both sides have a piece developed. So that's only a half a tempo advantage. So that's not enough for a pawn. Black decides to play safe and solid, retreats this bishop back to where it belongs, and he's only giving up 1 tempo, so White immediately develops another piece. White has 3 pieces developed. Black has 1. 3 minus 1 is 2. White is 2 tempos ahead, but actually he's only a tempo and a half ahead because it's Black's turn. Let's see how this holds up over the course of the next few moves. Okay, both sides are developing. And, okay, this is not what happened. I'm hitting the wrong button here. This was the recommended move, my recommended move. I was looking at this already before I started. Because it develops a piece, it prepares to castle. And I'll come back on this in just a second and evaluate it, because White didn't play queen d2. What's the move I've been criticizing virtually every, well, not every, but every 4th or 5th video? Pushing your rook pawns. He doesn't play queen d2. White plays h3, which I believe is just simply a bad move for all the reasons that we've outlined. It doesn't develop a piece and lets Black get closer to taking all of White's 1.5 tempo advantage away. Black does not want to play knight g4. Okay, he doesn't. Black wants to develop. He's got a king at home, a knight on b8 at home, a queen at home, and a rook at home. Okay, Black does not want to play knight g4, but White's preventing it. at the cost of weakening his position. G3 is now weak. This diagonal towards the king is weak. Black is doing great here. Now let's go back to queen d2. Suppose black does try knight g4. Well, black has adequate resources here. Just castle. Develop another piece. While black is chasing the bishop pair, white's mobilizing his army. Okay, we'll give black the bishop pair. Now look at white's game all of a sudden. White's castled. White has his three minor pieces in play and his queen's developed. Now, very suddenly, just like that, white has his three tempos, it seems like. Can we verify this easily enough? It is easy enough. Let's take a look. Black has two pieces developed. White has four pieces plus castled. 5 minus 2 is 3. In this position, white has full compensation for the pawn that he sacrificed. Okay? It's a game of chess. We don't know what's going to happen from this position, but black certainly needs to castle. Now look at this. Bring another rook into play. Menace e7. How's black going to deal with that? If you push e5, then that'll come back to f3, and that pawn's under stress. If you play e6, there may be a combination here. Watch this. Bishop takes. Now, if you take with the queen, there could be all kinds of annoying knight discoveries. If you take with the knight, there's a little trick here. And here's the trick. Okay, now we got a pin on this knight. It's not going away. If king h8, rook takes, and suddenly white's a pawn ahead instead of being a pawn down with a very strong position. So you answer with rook f7, and suddenly rook f1, and black's in serious trouble here. So this is a reason why you want to develop your pieces, because the chances start coming your way. When you stop and play a move like h3, your pieces aren't developed and you don't get these chances. Oops, went a little too far back. Okay. It's as simple as that. h3 does not mobilize the white pieces so that he can do what I just showed you. When you stop and make these moves, it's like you're running a 100-meter race and you're pushing your starting block back 10 yards or moving your opponent's starting block up 10 yards. No pieces in play, no chances. And it's going to be harder and harder and harder to play for a win. And white can't even be thinking about playing for a win right now. He's down a pawn and doesn't have enough compensation. Now, development is even. White's developed 3 minor pieces, or 4 minors, black 3, but black's castled. Okay? White needs to move his queen off the back rank. That's one move, castle one side or the other, and get the other rook into play. White needs 3 tempos to get his pieces in. Black needs 1 knight, 1 queen, and 1 rook. Now white's got no tempos for the pawn. Black's got a clear advantage here. So now what does white do? He retreats his bishop. I guess he didn't want it traded. But at the same time, he makes d4 vulnerable. And suddenly black's going to get some tricks on it, as we will see. Okay, now he starts thinking about getting castle queenside. But we have a curious lineup here. This bishop can do kind of some nasty things. If black wants, black could play bishop takes h3, but you might run into trouble with bishop takes f6. But black finds a very useful move, just simply bishop c6. This uncovers an attack on the bishop and puts this bishop on a terrific diagonal. And suddenly, white has to step carefully. So he brings the bishop back, and black develops his queen. Now, who's ahead in development? Black only needs to develop his queen rook. White needs to castle and develop a rook. Suddenly, black's ahead in development. Why did that happen? Well, here's one reason right here. Okay, there's one reason. The other reason is this bishop. Remember, it was on b5, it went back to d3, then it came to c4. And white's gained nothing from it. Queen d2 immediately instead of h3 gave black a chance to go wrong. We'll go back and look at that position in a little bit. And what does white do? He moves his other rook pawn. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, this is not helping you develop. Okay? Black doesn't want to put anything on b4. Doesn't want to put the queen there. Okay? Are you trying to kick the queen out? Well, that just creates weaknesses on your c file. You know, any place white puts his king, the pawn shield is riddled with weaknesses. Okay? So now rook d8, pitting the bishop. And bingo, e5, look what's under attack. And black has just won a piece. Just like that. And now comes more pressure. Discovery. And knight takes c3. Here the weakness of a3 is exposed. If white takes with the pawn on a3 falls. It didn't fall on a2, but because white's put it on a weak square, it's going to go. So white goes into desperate mode here and sacrifices a piece, but he just doesn't get enough. Black is now ahead 3 pieces. Okay, 3 pieces. And the attack is running out. And thank you for the free pawn. And more pressure. And black can pick his way to win. Knight c3 forces white to give up his queen, but black goes and threatens a mate instead. Mate on d2 is the threat. And white brings his queen back, and black has an immediate checkmate. So let's go back to this queen d2. Okay? Now, I was proving why black does not want to play knight g4. It gave white a terrific game. So let's play something sensible for black. Let's castle. And let's castle for white. Now, this is the first time I've observed this position. What I'm showing you is not forced. We're just looking to see what could happen. Let's count the tempos. White just needs to move his king rook into play. Black needs to bring a knight, a queen, and a other rook into play. So black is still down 2.5 tempos, I guess, right? No, yeah, arguably about 2 tempos. So black still needs to develop. How are you going to do that? Okay, let's try knight c6 because that develops a piece. It's not forced, but what I do is whenever I analyze a position, I make developing moves for the other side because I know developing moves put pieces into play where suddenly they become useful and can gain you some territory, can gain you some space advantage, a weak pawn, an outpost, a tactic, all kinds of things. Now, if I'm white, I don't want to trade pieces here, but if you do, I'm going to let him take back here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to put this rook into play. I'm going to put it on the e file. Now, let's develop a piece for black. Let's get this rook into play. Now, that might hang this pawn. See, here's the thing about having development. Knight takes, bishop takes. Well, maybe not. Let's see. Knight takes, bishop takes. I'm trying to win this pawn down here and not lose it to b6. Yeah, we can take it. Free pawn. Because b6 is met by a queen takes, and you've undermined the pawn on b6. So at this position, black can't even develop his rook. He's got to stop and play something like a6 himself. And if I'm white again, I want to keep the pieces on the board. I'm going to put this here. Keep some pressure on f7. Make you think about moving this rook. What's black going to do? I don't know. Queen c7 is a developing move. Let's try that. Okay. Now it's white to play. Let's work on e7. Can we do that? Okay, first off, let's take this. Okay. And now I'm going to play bishop g5. Why am I doing that? We could play bishop f4, but I'm doing bishop g5. The point is, white is trying to play bishop takes and knight d5. Let's develop something for black. Let's go hit that queen. Okay. Let's see. Since black just tempoed, let's Let's play bishop f4 and hit the queen here. Queen a5, that's similar to what happened in the game. And there might have been some discoveries on this bishop, but I'm just analyzing. But if with careful play, if you look what's happening, White doesn't get in any kind of trouble at all, and Black has to step carefully, but Black's preserving that advantage of the pawn. Chasing the bishop with knight g4 got Black in some trouble. So this just basically proves that White did not need to play h3, and Black does not need to if he doesn't need to chase that bishop. So it's still a game of chess. Black's ahead of pawn. White's still in the game. He's got his entire army developed. Anything can happen. Maybe White can play his. Well, wait. I've just hung this pawn on e7. See that? I'm not even paying attention. So where do you put the queen? This pawn is a goner. So let's see. Can you get anything with this? No, you're not on the bishop. So anyway, White would have had some compensation for the pawn, not full, but he certainly would have done better than playing h3. Okay, let's load up the other game, and always wonder what move it's going to start us at. It's supposed to start at move 1, but we never know. Oh, look at that. Move what? 10. Okay. So here we go. King's Gambit declined. Again, Black could look up the book and accept the gambit and get a totally satisfactory game. What's doing his tricks is taking moves back. Was doing that the last 24 hours. And there it is, h6. Oh my goodness. White wasn't planning to put anything on g5. He didn't even have an attacker on f7, mainly this bishop. Okay. If you're afraid of this bishop coming here and this knight coming here, it's too slow. Just develop a piece. Bishop c4, bishop e7, knight g5. There I'm attacking f7 and Black castles. Totally satisfactory position for Black. h3 does not help Black's game. It makes it worse. Now, in some positions in the King's Gambit, wait, where are we? In some positions in the King's Gambit, Black does play h6, but that's after he's taken here and he's creating a pawn chain trying to hold on to the pawn. But h6 on the third move, White's doing great here. And I would think bishop c4 would be a better square for the bishop. It's hitting f7. Anyway, a6. Now, is this bad? Well, at least he didn't play it before, and maybe that's one reason why to play bishop c4. If your opponent pushing one rook pawn, chances are he's going to push the other. Play bishop c4 and see if Black spends a tempo with a6. Aha. Okay, so anyway, I don't think it was wise to take this knight and follow up as White did, but it worked out for him. Black needs to play queen g5. This is thematic in the Ruy-Lopez exchange variation. It's one of Black's choices to regain the pawn. Black's going to regain this pawn here in a moment, and has reasonable play. Even though his pawn structure is a little different, there's enough of a strategic imbalance here to warrant that Black has a playable game. But he doesn't do this. Instead, he places bishop on b7 where it can't move unless it comes back. And White anchors in the pawn on d4 so he doesn't have to lose it. And now it also stops queen g5, so that window is closed. Okay, bishop d6, developing the piece. He just comes back. And look at this, f6. I mean, why? This takes away the best square for the knight, although he can't go there directly. It weakens g6. It weakens this diagonal. you know, black just loves to weaken his pawn structure. What would have been better here? Well, develop the queen. Then you can castle. I can see you might not want to play knight f6. You might run into some trouble with the e5, but then again, you might not. There's a pin to be had here. Let's see. Although it looks like this is going to turn out fine for white. But if you don't want to put the knight on f6, just wait. Play queen d7, castle queenside, and then think about how you're going to develop this knight. You might even go to e7 with it. But f6 doesn't develop a piece and just creates more weaknesses. Guys, you don't need to be making moves like this. They're just going to ruin you. And now white could check, but he doesn't. Just develops. But now that black's trying to castle queenside, and I think black should have castled kingside there when he had his chance, but that's why I think queen h5 check first was better. This essentially forces the black king to move, and now black can't castle. Although black is going to find a creative way to get castled. It's also going to cost him a lot of tempos, and white just starts increasing his advantage on the board. White's up a pawn, just like in the other game, and black doesn't have enough play. Now here's the idea, is to put the rook on a5 and get it into the game that way. And white just keeps improving his position. And now the black kingside pawns are shattered. And there goes one of them. Black's down 2 pawns. And he gets the queen developed. And they may have been a lot of better moves here for white, but he just maintains an advantage the rest of the way. And I'm not going to isolate all the different opportunities white and black had, but suffice it to say that white's up 2 clear pawns and even has the better position. So now, in effect, the black king is castled, and he's gotten his rook into play, but it's maybe not on the best square. There's some pressure on d5, but white can survive that, and he just picks up a 3rd pawn. Look at this. White has 6 pawns, black has 3. And, black just doesn't have enough. Now here's a nice exchange sacrifice. Pressure. Guards the d6 square. More pressure on d6. Now I think knight b5 at some point would have been good for white. He comes up with this interesting move. He says, go ahead, take my knight. I'll take your knight, be attacking your rook, and get ready to play bishop takes e5 check. So black wants no part of that. And now comes a check. And white's just cleaning up here. For the moment, he's ahead a piece. No, he's up. No, he's not. I'm sorry. He's down the exchange. He's made a sacrifice. But the pressure is still there, and black just can't cover all the threats. Knight a7 is the threat, winning back the exchange. So he comes down and gobbles a pawn, but it's not enough. That check comes anyway. And now that means the bishop's going to be lost. And now, no matter what black does, he's going to get checkmated. If he puts his king here or here, it's an immediate mate on e7. The only alternative is to interpose the rook, and then the same thing holds true. So black resigned after queen takes b7 check. So, again, more proof why not to move your rook pawns. And, well played by Scandium. Hopefully you guys can take these suggestions and improve your game. And I thank you for your time. Take care.